the reality is, John, one of the biggest trades when you consider the people that are involved in the trade, one of the biggest we've probably seen in any sport, really. I mean, the Herschel Walker trade, I go back to that one, John, but that was basically Herschel to the Vikings and the Vikings sending out like 5 or 6 starting players. They ruined everything from the franchise, sending all that down to Dallas, and it turned Dallas into a mega power right underneath when Jerry Jones was basically getting ready to take it and bring it to the next level, which he has done, or at least he did pretty early in that whole thing. This is a little bit different. I mean, when you look at this trade for Luka at Dallas, he's a top 5 guy, most likely in the NBA. I mean, everybody kind of talks about where everybody's ranked and all that. Did LeBron know anything about it? I got to tell you this, John. I get sort of tired about the superstars that we care what they think. And if the ownership, why did they care what they – I don't mind the idea of, hey, what do you think? What do you think of this quarterback, or what do you think of this? I get that talking to the players, but when it's all said and done, I think whether it's the general manager or the owner, they need to make the decisions that they think is the best decision to make the team better, right? I mean, that's the way I view it anyway. So they get Luka. He goes out to L.A., and then you get Anthony Davis, and he's going out to Dallas. Now, I guess the big question becomes, who got the better end of the deal? Now, everybody is saying, well, Luka's young. He's this, he's that. The one issue that you do have to have with Luka, John, is this, and everybody's brought this up, but the injuries. And how many games this guy has missed. Now, he's a great player. He's the reason the Timberwolves didn't get to the next level last year when the Timberwolves were running and had a shot and they would have gone up against Boston. They didn't get the opportunity. Luka is that good. He's a heck of a player. He's missed 91 games in his, I think it's 5 or 6 year career, John. So that's something that I think is something concerned about by a lot of people. We also talk about Luka and the fact that he doesn't really show up in shape. He decides to show up and then work himself into basketball shape. It's like the old days in the NFL. Remember that, John, when the players would show up and they'd use the training camp to get in shape? They don't do that anymore anywhere that I'm aware of. And you know what? If they try to do that, you're going to get cut rather. And I see this whole trade. I think it's pretty interesting. I'm one of the few guys out there who thinks, you know what? Anthony Davis at 31, 32 years old, I think he's got time. He's had injuries too, though, so, I mean, that's going to be an issue. But for right now, the here and now, I actually think Dallas for this year might have actually gotten the better of them. Now, into the future, because of age and everything else, probably not. But LeBron's not going to play forever, so they needed some face out there, John, and I think that was part of this trade too. And shoot, this guy is one of the top guys in the NBA. He just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and there's also only one basketball on the court at a time, Pete. Yeah. Which, I'll be honest, with Michael Jordan, it made a difference. Was Michael an unselfish player? At times, absolutely. But was he allergic to leather, as they say? Yes. That ball touches his hands, it's going up. And the same thing with Luka, Pete. That guy will rain threes from anywhere, and I know LeBron used to be able to do that. I don't know how good he is at it anymore. But are there enough basketballs between those two guys, Pete? And not just basketballs in terms of winning games, but basketballs in terms of what if all of a sudden Luka is putting up, 10 points more than LeBron every game? How long does the king take that, Pete, before he's like, oh, hell with this, and starts talking to the other players about not giving Luka the ball so much? I mean, I think you're right. I think Dallas might have got the better end of the deal. But on the other hand, LeBron's going to be gone one of these days. Luka's young enough that he could carry the team for those years when LeBron is gone. But while they're both there, Pete, like I say, there ain't enough basketballs on that court.
They might be fighting over those basketballs. I think you're right. John, we'll hit more about the Super Bowl later in the week because, it's going to be nonstop. And obviously, I don't know if you saw the Pro Bowl, but that you can't watch it. There is no Pro Bowl. Let's be honest.
No.
They put all these guys out there. They're playing video games. They're doing this. They're doing that. I mean, it really has gone the wrong way. That's another one where I think that they haven't done a great job up in the upper echelon of the C-suite of the NFL because this thing has really gone the wrong way. And Peyton Manning Productions and all that, John, they're the ones really putting this thing out there. And I'll tell you what, in the last 3 years, it has dropped basically 1 million viewers per year. Bing, bing, bing. I mean, so we'll see if they want to keep doing this whole thing, but I can't watch it. And nobody that I've talked to said, yeah, I watched it. I couldn't find one person, and I know a lot of guys in sports and everything else, in football and everything. Nobody's watched it. Nobody's interested, and it's terrible. So I figured we'd do this one, John. Pete Carroll and the Raiders could really be kind of interesting. This is a team that was 4-13 last year, right? Pete Carroll stepped away from the game or was pushed away, whatever the case up in Seattle. But in any case, he was missing for a year. Well, he's back with the Raiders. Do you know who he signed as offensive coordinator today, John? Pretty interesting. Chip Kelly.
From
now,
Ohio
he and Chip
State.
Kelly, they know each other pretty well, John, because there was a point in time where Pete was at USC. Well, Chip was up at Oregon, and they've been Philadelphia and this, and, so they've been around against each other quite a bit. Now he's got him as an offensive coordinator. I'll tell you what, after watching Ohio State and what they did with the quarterback and the rest of those great players that they had, Chip Kelly did call some pretty damn good plays, I think, for the offense, and he did it throughout the year. So that's kind of fun. They got a great tight end, John, who broke records as a rookie this year at the Raiders. They got a wide receiver in Jacoby Myers. They got a guy that they're eyeing up, according to my guys on the inside over there, that there's a guy out there that reminds Pete Carroll of DK Metcalf. And I think that's a pretty impressive guy to remind you of. He's 6'5", weighs about 220 pounds. He's a complete freak show athlete. His last name is McMillan. He's a wide receiver who set some records at Arizona this past year, John. That could be pretty cool, I think. If they do something like that with their pick in the first round, they've got a 6th-round pick or 6th pick in the draft. But what about this? Who if you were there, who would you suggest for quarterback? Because they don't have a quarterback. I know there's guys on the roster. They don't have a quarterback. So do you do this? Here's my 2 guys I'll throw out to you because you're probably not going to draft one. And I don't know that you're going to be able to draft the right guy at that position. Russell Wilson, back with Pete Carroll like he was at Seattle, or with Sam Darnold. And the reason I bring his name up, John, is how did he look this past year with the Vikings most of the year till those final 2 games, the last game of the year? I mean, the guy was talked about for MVP, definitely all-pro, had an unbelievable year, and he had a hell of a lot of talent around him, good tight ends, great wide receivers. Sounds a little bit like the Raiders to me. So do you go with Russell Wilson, or do you maybe take a shot on Sam Darnold and just say, we got some guys on defense, got a nice offensive line. We did some good drafting last year and previous years for that offensive line to get bigger and better. You just need a quarterback. That's what they're missing. Probably a running back too, but you could draft a running back, 2nd, 3rd round, something like that. What do you do about quarterback, John?
Well, the thing that works against Darnold, Pete, is that he's got the big contract coming. I mean, wherever he goes, that's going to be $140 million ticket or more, depending how many years. So, when you're in that rarefied $40 to $60 million number, just look at Cousins. I mean, he's down there in Atlanta and he crapped in the bed without the big wide receivers and the tight end and all the stuff like you said. So less of a risk, Russell. Less of a risk to, the franchise's money and its ability to sign other players. Russell Wilson, I think, because obviously freaking the Walmart, every time you buy something at Walmart, folks, you're putting money in Russell Wilson's pocket because that was the stupid trade that they made to get Russell Wilson in Denver. So I think Russell is a good guy. I think that was a bad situation that he made worse by, wanting all the special star treatment and everything else, Pete. If he decides to be a real human, like he seemed to be with the Steelers, because I don't think Tomlin plays that game at all.
No, he does not.
And I don't think Brady's going to play that game. Not that he's the GM, but I don't think Brady'd love to pat him on the back and tell him great job, but he ain't going to baby that guy and give him his own private locker room and all that stuff like Denver did. So I would say Russell Wilson more likely than Darnold because of the money you'd have to shell out to get Darnold, Pete.
I think you're probably right. I look at it as, you know what, it's a situation so much like the Vikings for Sam Darnold in this case, where they've got the talent, they've got a really talented guy calling the plays, you know, in Chip Kelly now. And you've got Pete Carroll, who's a great defensive mind. So they've really put something together, I think. I think it's potential that these guys could maybe pull a Washington type move, John, where they go from the bottom and maybe at least get up there, not at the top, but somewhere closer to the top. I mean, I think if they do the right things to get that franchise together, the Raiders could be pretty damn interesting. But a lot of that does hinge around who do they grab as a quarterback, and I guess we'll find out about that one.